I think we're especially vulnerable to burning out because all you do is give, 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 give. And I think the biggest lesson that I've had in the last 5 years is the importance of putting the vision or the lens on you for a change and figuring out what gives you joy, what makes you happy, because you can't give forever, but taking the time out to focus on yourself, practice self-compassion, even though that can sometimes sound really cliche, and figuring out what really makes you tick, because every industry has sort of, I guess, a defined or predefined appearance of a success.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Passion Institute podcast today. I'm really excited to be able to introduce to you Dominique Lee. Dominique is a cancer specialist that works in Brisbane in Icon. She's very passionate about well-being, and she's been doing a bunch of studies. That's how we met when I was speaking at a particular conference. She's a mum, she's a wife, she does a lot of work on a number of volunteer things, and I'm just so excited to be able to talk to somebody who is so passionate about a number of areas in her life. Welcome, Dom.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Shivani.
Oh, I'm so excited, and it's
Very
been
honoured to be
exciting.
here.
Yeah, well, Dominique and I have been working together on a couple of projects around well-being for doctors, and we really want to take that work in different areas as well. Dom, obviously our podcast is cool. You know, we talk about passion a lot. I'm a bit obsessed with this particular word. Tell me, what does this word mean to you? Like, how do you define it? What is it for you? And how do you, kind of live this particular word of passion?
Oh, I love your focus on passion. I work in an industry where individual needs are not considered very important. And I can't, I remember a number of years ago attending a workshop where for the first time in many years, I was asked, what are your values? What things are really important to you? And I remember circling a few of the known core values that was on the piece of paper. And then we had this exercise where if we had to give up a few, what would be the most important? What would you get rid of first? And I remember the lady who was running the meeting, the workshop, looked at me as I was putting down some of the values that I'd written down and I'd picked, and she says, "Dom, you look like you're struggling a little bit." She said, I see that you're, as you put down more of your values as, less important, you're starting to clutch onto the other values that are really important to you. So have a look at those, the top three, and let's reflect on that. And that was several years ago, probably 5 years ago now, the first time I actually thought about what's actually important to me, what values really speak to me and drive my action. And then 2 years ago, we met at our college conference where you were doing your fantastic talk on living according to your passion. And I guess that kind of brought a fresh eye to, I'd never actually thought about my passion that much in the last, since I entered the medical workforce. And breaking it down and having a different light, and it was a really beautiful way of trying to figure out what I want in my life that is bigger than what my job dictates from me or requests of me. And so for me, passion is it's pretty simple. I live a very hectic life, as you've already described, and I'm tired most of the time. But passion for me, the things that I'm passionate about, the things that I'm happy to read about, I'm happy to invest my spare time doing, and the things that really bring me joy. And to me, the first thing, there's really three things that I can think of that I'm really passionate about. One is my work. Work is really important. I love caring for my patients. And then the second thing is my family. And also, I've sort of entered this journey of advocacy and creating a better culture around me. And if I feel like I've sort of fulfilled those three elements, I'm pretty happy. And I think it's a fairly simple way of looking at life and passion. And the times when I'm feeling really down or I don't feel very happy are the times when I'm heavily, you know, engaged in one area but neglecting the other two or even one. And so, yeah.
Yeah, what a beautiful answer, and so considered, considering I just threw that at you. And so, you know, what I heard was that, yeah, even when I'm tired, I'm kind of, you know, driven to do better in the areas that I'm really passionate about. And sometimes I can become a bit obsessed with one area, but I've got a pretty clear idea of it. Dominique, you and I have spent some time offline, you know, talking about a bunch of things around well-being. And, you know, one of the things that forms us into who we are is that, you know, sometimes we're in that fire where the fire defines and creates who we are and who we become. And so we have these high highs and these low lows sometimes in our lives, and they become, or they create who we are today. I just wondered, you know, whether you would share with the audience today of sort of leaders and entrepreneurs that tune into this podcast, what are some of those challenging, transformative moments for you, and what the moments were, and then what was the transformation that took place as a result?
What a great question. For me, I feel like I've had a relatively ordinary life. You know, my number one goal during as a child and as a teenager was to become a doctor. I'd become that, and then through you know, exploring different things, I ended up settling with cancer as a specialty to specialize in. Life does throw curveballs to everyone. And for me, it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to look at, or maybe I shouldn't call it an opportunity. It was I was forced to look at life in a different light. So almost, I was very close to becoming a specialist in my final year of specialist training. So I was 32, and I was invited to who I considered a mentor's house to talk about my career progression. And that evening, I didn't realize I was going to be alone with him, but I was. And I was drugged and consequently assaulted. And, you know, the things that followed after that really changed the way I look at, I guess, life in general and the way we look at life without thinking too much, I guess. I had to fight a big legal battle, and that took a long time. And I was, you know, my personality after that incident, I feel like had changed completely. I was a very outgoing person and became very withdrawn. But because I'm so committed to my work and job, I continued to work through the whole time. And I never really looked deep into how I could heal myself, because the whole, you know, journey was about getting through it all. During that time, the shame of the whole process, you know, that a lot of people considering that sexual assault or some sort of harassment is experienced by at least 1 in 10 people, general population. It's not, I'm not alone in experiencing this. However, I thought in such a hierarchical and a small world of medicine that I live in, that the shame of my experience or the whole ordeal was enough that I would never be able to live through it. And so one of the ways I would, you know, that helped me to survive is by thinking, once I get through the whole court process, no matter what the outcome is, I didn't actually have to face it, because I would kill myself. That's what I used to think. And, you know, it wasn't until many years later, several things have happened, and I've obviously continued to live, that I realized that the way I was looking at myself following the assault is the way the world conditions women, or conditions people to look at or view view sexual assault related in the workplace, and who the troublemaker is, and who is to blame, and so on. And I looked around and was able to finally realize that the people that are and the merits and the achievements that is valued, at least in my profession, in effect suppressed and caused harm to innocent people. And so I was very happily walking along the path of, prescribed success. You finish your training, you become a specialist, you get hired in a whatever institution, and then you would have a very long, prosperous career if you just follow. But for the first time, I was able to look around and see the pain around me of the people who are actually left behind. And it sort of became my life mission since then, and that's now several years ago, to try and do what I can to make medicine or hospitals a less lonely place for doctors and also other healthcare workers who aren't given the recognition because perhaps they haven't had the time to achieve the things that more senior people have, or haven't done the research, or things along those lines. And that's been a real transformative experience for me in a really long roundabout kind of way.
No, that's not roundabout at all. And thank you so much for sharing that vulnerability. That is not an easy thing to share, Dominique. And, I'm so sorry that happened. I know we've spoken a little bit about that in the past. But, what I love when I'm talking about something like passion with you and having you there is that it's what you've chosen to done with it. So it's not just what happened to you. You are now taking that experience and you're creating a better future for so many doctors, so many female doctors, so that starts to become a different place. And I think that is extraordinary in terms of, who you are and also, what you're trying to do. Dominique, I just want to switch gears for a second and, talk about this notion of how do we create more passionate people and businesses. And, I know you've shared with me that doctors are burning out. We've talked about how much stress they're under, and then there's added things like sexual assault and a whole heap of things, which happen in all industries, but in this case, like just speaking about the industry that you're in. And so what have you seen? It doesn't necessarily need to be where you're at today. I know that you've been studying and you've been, presenting a lot around wellbeing for doctors and health, et cetera, as well. What do you think? What have you seen as, one or two things that really help create more passionate people, whatever industry they're in, but specifically to your industry, that really helps create that? And what do you think we can do around
that? Look, I can't speak for everybody, but I think I do represent certain groups of population. So, I'm very typical of someone who gives a lot to work, and I live to serve. It's one of my main values. I love making other people's lives better. And for people like me, I think we're especially vulnerable to burning out because all you do is give. And I think the biggest lesson that I've had in the last 5 years is the importance of putting the vision or the lens on you for a change and figuring out what gives you joy, what makes you happy, because you can't give forever. And there's obviously very selfish people on the other spectrum. And then there's people like me who just live to please, well, I shouldn't say live to please other people, but whereas like for me, I just love seeing other people feeling happy or having a good outcome because of what I've been able to give. But taking the time out to focus on yourself, practice self-compassion, even though that can sometimes sound really cliche, and figuring out what really makes you tick, because every industry has sort of, I guess, a defined or predefined, appearance of a success. But then, and it doesn't take into account that we're very diverse people bringing different diverse lived experiences and personalities in. And there's not a lot of room for authenticity. But I think when you are your authentic self, you will be performing at your best, and B, you will be happy. And being happy, you're going to make other people around you happy. And I think that's a big learning thing that I've experienced in the last 5 years.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. You've already talked a little bit about this, Dom, in terms of, how did we make the things in business better? It's about having that drive and that focus. And you've also talked a little bit about, challenges when they come your way, like you sort of sit there and digest them and do that. Is there anything else that you do when challenges come your way? Some people have a ritual or a process. Some people write it down. Some people go for a walk or a run. Like when something's coming at you, whether it's work related, home related, how do you go about dealing with it?
I think if it's personal challenges, then I think it's, as you say, very helpful to write it out, or set a plan for yourself. Self-reflection is often really key to finding an answer to your problem. But when it comes to a workplace challenge or challenges that are beyond yourself and involves other people, the best thing is to talk to people. Your best resource is going to be people. And I've, working in medicine where there is a clear hierarchical structure, where, the kind of leadership that I've often seen is, top down. And medicine itself, doctors are, the way we work is paternalistic. This is what's best for you. And I think when people reach a point of leadership, they often do that with their workers, with their colleagues, and say, I think you should do this. But I think a lot of the times the answers lie within the people, and the solutions lie within the people, and talking it out with your people is probably the quickest way of arriving to a solution. And it also helps to mobilize people because it's their idea. They're most likely to drive it.
Yeah, great. And just having that delineation between personal and work there, is really great. You've done so many things, Dom. I want to know some.
Not really.
Well, a lot, really, when you look at that. I want to know about some of your future passions. What are some of your aspirations? Doesn't matter whether it's 1, 2, 10, 50 years. Tell me about some of them. Share with us some of your future passions.
Yeah, my it's super abstract, but my long-term or life mission is really to make medicine, because it's my core environment, a less lonely place, and help people build relationships and connections and stay safe. And keep an eye out for the peripheral people and include and value diversity, and show how embracing difference can result in much better outcomes within your institutions. And staying connected is really the only way to stay alive. I think we often forget that in high functioning communities, because it often feels like, it's all on you, and what you achieve. But at the end of the day, what individuals can achieve will never be as great as what groups can achieve. And, they say Homo sapiens survived and so, won the whole survivorship thing because they worked in packs and organized. And I think in this current climate where winners take all, often it feels like that. I think, people knowingly, unknowingly, subconsciously think that, winning is everything. But winning is everything when it involves more than one individual. We can do a lot more as a group than one person.
Yeah, so true, isn't it? And it's that power of the collective. We talk about it, but sometimes we sort of forget to say, hey, how do we, combine or joint venture or combine some of our forces or common passions in terms of being able to do that. Dominique, you talked a little bit about this already, but I want to dive a little bit more into your own rituals. So what are some of the things you do for your own well-being? Now, I'm always focused on mental wellness a little bit more, seeing that that's becoming a bigger issue. And I know you've shared with me offline some of the challenges that doctors are facing. So I'd love for you to talk a bit about that. And I want to know, like, do you have rituals daily or weekly or once a year you go somewhere? Talk us through them.
Yeah. So we as human beings, the pillars of health, physical and spiritual and, and mental, I think we forget in professional life that all of those things are very important. I've come to understand that rituals are very important. I'm a relatively creative individual, so I've managed to live without having a diary until my 30s. I rely on my memory, which is not very good, every year, but getting worse every year. But rituals are really helpful. And one of my rituals is, because working in an industry where there's a lot to do, it's relentless. I used to have never-ending to-do list each day. And if I've done some, and then I'll always create more to do more. But I've learned to prioritize 5 or 6 and kind of be okay if I've done those top things, and stop the rat race of having to do more and more as much as possible type thing. And every evening or every morning, I would try and reflect on my top 3 core values, which really drive me and gives me purpose, and see if I've lived according to that, and trying to be okay about my day if I've lived according to my values. That's been really helpful. And also try and incorporate every year, try and make exercise a thing, but
I really like that. Like, it's daily, almost, it's like a daily checklist of going,
yeah,
I do that value, did I do this, did I do that? That's great, rather than some people what we've had on the podcast as guest, Dominique will say, every year I go away for 2 weeks, or I go to a silent retreat for a week or whatever. And I just love that little daily check-in, around that as well. And Dominique, if people want to find out more about you, your work, some of the pretty big things you've taken on, whether it's about safety of doctors in the workplace, whether it's some of the wellbeing stuff that you're doing, where's the best places or platforms to find you? Where can people connect with you?
So I do have a LinkedIn account, and you can find me on Google, Dr. Dominique Lee, with Icon. I work at the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Brisbane. There are admin emails that you could directly email me to or via LinkedIn messaging. I do have a doctor's wellbeing company called Hey Boss. We have a website called heyboss.org, through which you can contact me. I'm also Hey Boss, I think Doctors, there's an Instagram as well, so you can reach me out there.
Beautiful. We'll put some of those links into the podcast. I'm going to hang out with you in a moment on a couple of other things. Just thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a real pleasure and honor. Thank you, Shivani.
Thank you for joining us on the Passion Institute podcast. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to maybe take some action or helped you see a business in your new light, we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us present a great show. Leave a review and share this episode with other fellow entrepreneurs and leaders who also are ready to make an impact. Remember, passion is the fuel for greatness, and every step you take brings you closer to your vision. Keep dreaming big, leading with purpose, and making waves in the world. Until next time, stay passionate, stay inspired, and keep building your legacy. This is your host, Shivani, and signing on from the Passion Institute podcast. See you soon.